The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Monday, August 3rd, 2020. Thanks so much for joining me. Let's begin with this fixation that Donald Trump has with the platform TikTok, the social media platform. Not only Donald Trump, but also Chuck Schumer has come out with a press conference over the weekend discussing how he's been against TikTok and the amount of data that they glean and allegedly send back to the Communist Party of China. I wanted to give their exact framing because it is the absurdity of focusing on a social media platform at the time when 157,000 Americans are dead. 45 million Americans are unemployed. 25 million of those have lost their insurance, they lost their unemployment benefits. 5.4 million lost their health insurance in the middle of a pandemic. And yet our leaders are focusing on a social media platform that, for all intents and purposes, does the same thing with regards to data to you as Facebook and Twitter and every other social media platform, Instagram. I was talking to my wife this weekend about getting some matting, some padded floors for our garage for our kids to play in. And less than 5 minutes later, we had a commercial, an ad on Instagram about the very thing. So whatever TikTok is doing, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, and Silicon Valley here in the United States perfected. And if you think about it in context of the concerns about data and where that data goes, we do know for a fact that all of these major Silicon Valley corporations work with the United States government to turn over our data to them. Now, you might say, well, it's not as bad as TikTok turning our data over to the Communist Party of China. I want to be sure about something here before we go any further. The Communist Party of China is a label. China is very capitalistic. China is very, extremely about making that profit. The terminology of the Communist Party of China, whatever it means domestically to them here in the United States, domestically here in the United States, it's really a dog whistle. It's really a red scare tactic that has come back in vogue on the backs of the Russia scare, on the backs of all of the fear mongering that's going on around Russia. And so when you hear people say the Communist Party of China, it's right alongside the idea that Russia is still communist when China and Russia are both members in good standing of the global capitalist class. All right, let's be sure about that. So it is a game that is being played on us by the ruling elite to try to make us fear. I mean, I think clearly nobody is really afraid of the data that China is getting, with maybe one exception. The fact that so many military soldiers, American soldiers, are doing TikToks from their bases. You know, I can see how it would be problematic for even if it's a frenemy state, friendly competition between the United States and China. I could see there being a problem with all the data, the location data, all the metadata that goes along with social media being absorbed off of soldiers, troops, and all of their facilities and being siphoned over to China or any other country for that matter. But that's not an issue of the general public. That's an issue of the military and military discipline. That's on you guys. But outside of that, it's nothing more than a bunch of fear mongering at a time when we have some serious issues going on. More than anything else, that's the thing for me. We have some serious issues going on here, America. We got our own shit to deal with, and yet it appears to me that we're going to get some kind of bipartisan consensus on trying to force TikTok to be sold to Microsoft or some other American-based company. There is no such thing, by the way. I mean, honestly, I kind of this is kind of a big one. We could talk about this for days because of all the propaganda that like Facebook is engaging in. Facebook wanted to get in China, but when Facebook couldn't get into China, Facebook turned and tried to label themselves before Congress, as Mark Zuckerberg tried to label it himself and Facebook as a good American tech company. But the reality is none of these tech companies have any loyalty to any nation. Their loyalty is to the dollar, to the bottom line. Only thing worse than nationalism is capitalism. So they're willing to sell out any country. They have no loyalty, but they're trying to present this as companies that are loyal to America versus companies that are loyal to China, which in itself is meaningless at a time like this. Let me play this clip of Chuck Schumer doing Chuck Schumer, which is ultimately pathetically ridiculous.
I have been very opposed to TikTok. I was one of the first to expose the Chinese links. And I have urged that TikTok be closed down in America. There's a new proposal. Mnuchin and Meadows brought it up yesterday to have Microsoft take it over. There are some questions that have to be answered. How will the data be stored and secured? Will the Chinese have links into TikTok? So before I would be for such a merger, I'd have to get some answers to these questions.
So this is the focus. Now, to be fair to him, look at this shit. I'm sorry. Look at I pause. This is perfect. I just opened up Instagram. I don't even know why I opened up Instagram in the middle of recording the show. I just happened to open it up. And here's another ad for We Sell Mats. Okay, literally, the second thing I see on Instagram when I open it up is an ad about mats. And I just mentioned it to you on the show. Okay, so this is not new technology. I know this has been out for a while, but this speaks to the problem in general. The problem is the fact that these companies are making billions of dollars off of our data, and they exploit every level of data that they possibly can. And whenever it benefits them, they will share that data with the government, with the federal government. And so while everyone is worried about the data that's being shared with the Communist Party of China, it's the same exact thing. The motivation is the same. Profits when they can make profits, and turn over data to the government whenever the government needs to do its big brother thing. So they don't have a problem with you being exploited, your data being exploited here in the United States. They just have a problem with your data being exploited in the same exact way and then given to the Chinese part, the Chinese Communist Party. Which I guess if your thing is nationalism and you want to engage in the fear mongering of communism, then fine. I guess that gives you a valid reason to, not valid, but that gives you a reason to be afraid of TikTok. But whatever. I don't even care about the platform. At the end of the day, what I care about is how ridiculous and how absurd America really is. That these are the things that we are talking about. That this is what's on the mind of the president of the United States. This is what's on the mind of the Senate minority leader. Right. And to be fair to him, it was at a press conference where he was talking about other issues. But the answer to this question that was posed by a reporter is not to say, oh, let's get Microsoft to take it over. It's to say we've got more important things to worry about right now. If it's a military issue and you're worried about your soldiers using TikTok and location data and metadata being sent to the Chinese Communist Party, then do that internally. Fine. But if everything, all the rest of this it's just emblematic of how utterly ridiculous America is in one of our darkest moments. So many people are dying. So many people are getting sick and having side effects that we don't even understand yet. So many people are trying to survive right now in this minute. And our political leaders are talking about a social media app that does the same thing that every other social media app does to you in this country. And those same companies turn over that data to this government, this right-wing authoritarian government, the government that is being run by President Donald Trump and his Gestapo. Same thing is happening to us here, and they have no problem with that whatsoever. All right, let's talk about what's going on with the United States Post Office. Let's be sure about one thing. The conservative movement, the conservative consensus in this country has always been about privatization of everything. Everything should be owned by corporations, and everything should have the profit motive underneath it. And they have been salivating at a couple of things in particular over the last 30, 40 years. They've been trying to get their hands on Social Security to completely privatize it, Medicaid, Medicare to completely dissolve it and privatize it, as well as the USPS, the United States Postal Service. They've been trying to break it apart for years. And now with Donald Trump in office, he has appointed the Postmaster General, person who has intentionally sabotaged the post office, the Postal Service. And he's done so because, well, a couple of things. Two outcomes come from this. One, if you undermine the strategy has always been the same, right? Republicans get into office, they sabotage the federal government and any state government for that matter. And then they say, oh, look, the system doesn't work. The government doesn't work. The government is inefficient. No, what's inefficient is everything that you put in place to intentionally be inefficient so that you can make the excuse of privatizing it. This idea that everything that's in the private sector is more efficient than the federal government has become an aphorism that is just patently false, right? It's a statement that they assert as truth, and no one ever really challenges it because it has just become the crown jewel of the talking point of the right. When in reality, if the government is inefficient at all, it's because of the people who have been put in charge of it. All right, so let's dig in. This first quote is from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and this is what they said. According to local union leaders and carriers, mail is piling up in local offices, unscanned and unsorted. Mail carriers who spoke to the Philadelphia Inquirer said they are overwhelmed, working long hours, yet still unable to finish their routes. Offices are short-staffed that when officers are so short-staffed that when a carrier is out, a substitute is often not assigned to their route. Wow. So these are cost-cutting measures instituted by the newly appointed Postmaster General, and the decisions that he has made, the decisions that he's making, that's exactly what is exacerbating the problem. Louis DeJoy, he is a Republican donor. He is a huge supporter of Donald Trump, and it is his decisions that are creating the dilemma. And of course, Donald Trump is okay with this because if he can crash the Postal Service, then he doesn't have to worry about mail-in ballots. Because of the majority of America, I guarantee the majority of ballots that are going in this year are going to be mail-in ballots because most people are not going to put their lives on the line to go vote for either one of these guys. So he understands that he could, his supporters are going to go out. They don't care. They're Republican supporters are faithful even unto death. Okay, let's just be sure they're willing to die for Donald Trump. I don't know how many of us are going to die for Joe Biden. I'm not, but I digress. According to the Washington Post, he's donated some $2 million to the Republican Party just underneath Donald Trump. These are the things that he's done. He's shut down mail sorting machines, so the workers have to do it by hand, according to the Washington Post. Seriously, he has, he stopped overtime pay. And according to one report, he and his wife have somewhere between $40 and $70 million invested in private post office competitors. So this is literally the case of Trump putting the fox over the hen house. And now all of a sudden, a system that has been, making its own way for decades, because it's primarily now funded by not tax dollars, but by stamps, selling stamps. And they've created one of the most efficient, so efficient that Amazon comes to the post office for mail delivery, for delivery of their packages, particularly on the weekends and Sundays. So the post office has been the most efficient government program in the history of this country. And with one decision, Donald Trump has appointed someone who is in there intentionally sabotaging the system. so that they can, undermine the presidential election beforehand, but also for the crown jewel. It's not even for these people who, for this DeJoy guy. He's not doing this. Trust me, he is not doing this just to help Donald Trump. He has his eyes on the grand prize, which is to dissolve this system into private companies that they can make profit off of. The sadistic nature of this conservative consensus in this country is something that we're going to have to confront head on. Like, this is a level of damage that people are not getting their prescriptions through the mail on time. People are not getting important checks through the mail on time. Like, the Postal Service has been a critical component of the United States since the United States was the United States. And it has been the gold standard of ensuring that every corner of this nation can get its mail. And with one decision, Donald Trump has put us in a position where it has completely undermined the capacity of this. And then this isn't to say that they can't recover. It's not to say that the damage is irreversible. But so long as we have sociopaths like Donald Trump, who's willing to burn this entire country to the ground for the sake of his ego, and he's appointing his sycophants who are willing to do anything and everything so that they can get profits, then we can say goodbye to the post office as we know it. Buy some stamps, go to their website, buy some merchandise, help fund them a little more, however you can. Send your stuff through the post office, and be patient with the post office. And most of all, do not let this lie take root. What lie is that? Good question. I'm glad you asked. It is the lie that they are going to try to forward going forward, that the post office is inefficient. That is a lie. It is only inefficient because of Donald Trump and his appointees. All right, let's keep this party going. Donald Trump tweeted out this morning. There was a time where I wouldn't even cover his tweets. There was a time, but because of the sociopathy that we're dealing with and the danger that we're actually facing, you actually have to cover this bullshit. Here's Donald Trump. He's saying cases up because of big testing. Much of our country is doing very well. Open the schools. Now, again, obviously, we've gone over the fact that he's insisting on this fallacious logic, illogic. He insists on pushing this. And the reason he insists on pushing this is because he has to give his supporters something. They need something. The fact that we are having 30, 40, 50, 60,000 cases, new cases a day, the number of deaths are increasing. The fact that the 157,000 Americans have died, 4.6 million Americans have been infected. 19,000 more Americans could die from COVID-19 in the next 20 days, according to the CDC. 20,000 Americans in 20 days. 1,000 Americans a day. And so because there's so much blood on the hands of Donald Trump, he has to give himself something to never have to look himself in the mirror. Not that he would care particularly, but his supporters, he's got to give them something. And so they just throw out anything. The most ridiculous thing of all, the reason the cases are up is because we're doing more testing. As if there's a causal link. As if people who are getting tested are getting infected because they got tested. We've talked about that illogic. But most insidiously is the fact that his supporters want and need and crave those lies. I think I saw somewhere on social media, somebody actually said a Republican said exactly what I have been kind of theorizing. And the essence of it, I can't find the exact screenshot. Maybe it was on Facebook, or Twitter, one of these platforms. But this conservative basically said that they would rather be lied to and maintain their conservative worldview than to be told the truth and become a socialist. And they said it as though it was a value statement. Like I would rather this propaganda to protect me from socialism. Because the greater evil in their equation was socialism. Even if that socialism is rooted in the truth. The greater evil was not the propaganda, not the lies, but the socialism. Especially even if the truth led to socialism. Now, I give him credit for having enough working digits to be able to put that sentence together. And to be able to grapple with that reality that he would rather live, I forgot the gender or whatever, but that individual, they would rather live in a world of lies. At least they can admit it to themselves. But this is the world that we live in. And so the fact that Donald Trump can consistently push out this lie that the cases are up because of testing, it gives conservatives exactly what they need to hold on to the little bit of the last string, the last thread. They're hanging on by a thread because of how much damage their dear leader has done to this country. But they got to have something, and Donald Trump never fails to deliver. He gives them something as ridiculous as this is. The obvious part about this that I want to talk about more so than the propaganda and the lies and the delusion and the self-delusion that they're engaging in is the fact that he starts off this tweet by saying cases are up, and then he says, open the schools. My first question was, and I replied to it, and then a lot of people replied similarly at the same time, and it began trending. It was send Barron first. Send your son first. Ben, don't bring kids into, but F that. Don't bring the president's kids into politics. No, kiss my ass. You're putting our children at risk. Let's talk about what you're doing with your child, going to a prestigious private school that's going to be completely online. That's what's happening with his child. But he's more than happy to send your children out into these petri dish schools that even on a good day, when the sun is shining and not a cloud in the sky, every infection, every virus, every bug, every germ, every snotty nose, every unwashed hands, it's just a petri dish. And he's more than happy to send your children back out into this. Of course, and then again, underneath it, obviously, is the fact that they want to get rid of public schools. Instead of creating some type of accommodation that would very simply and very easily provide online learning in the same structured fashion, easily provide laptops, easily provide hotspots, internet access to every single person in this country. That is not the difficult thing. Easily could provide meals for children. The most difficult thing in this equation are all of the essential employees who need their children to be able to go somewhere during the day. That's the difficult thing that we haven't even gotten to a point of discussing that because, well, they want to open up schools back. Because they know if they open up schools back and the attendance is down and they have not made any accommodation, then the funding is cut state by state by state. Attendance is tied to your budget. Your budget is tied to attendance. And so they're more than happy to put the lives of children at risk, all for the hopes of being able to defund education in this country. That's the reality of American politics. That's the reality of the conservative consensus. And the fact that we don't have enough pushback against it is the reality of both parties in this country.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. At this part of every single episode, I'd like to take a minute to thank the people who make the show possible, our patrons. Very special welcome to Dean Uhura, Joseph Offerus, Guy Shaw, Tanner Gilbert, C. Kinney, Clifton Scott, Carrie Archie, Michael Tilliard, Kristen Forever. Everybody just bop your head. Thank you all for becoming patrons. Control plus J, thank you for becoming a patron. Diane Carr, Jeremy Gray, Church Satanica. Okay, welcome aboard. Margarita Baird, Zach Bird, Mark Garcia, Noel Camrado, Wade Ms. Livy, Deborah Cobus, Tracy Fuller, congressional baseball fans. Thank you all for becoming patrons. You too can join this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/the BPD show, where you get twice the content, uncut, unfiltered interviews, none of the commercial interruptions, and you give me the ability to speak power into the powerless, whether the powerful like it or not. You heard me?
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Yep.
Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
That's it. What? Check me out, yo. Okay, couple of announcements. So, big news, I'm trying a new format. I want you to always call in every single day, no matter what day it is. 857-600-0518. I'm going to include voicemails in every single episode. So long as you're calling, I will be including and I will answer questions. I will let your comment play, even if it's not a question. I want to, I miss the sound of your voices. One of the reasons I got into podcasting was not to get into podcasting. It was to get into radio so that I could do live callers, because I love listening to live callers. Constraints have pushed me to the podcasting format, which means that I can't take live callers, but I can certainly facilitate voicemails. So there's going to be another whole half hour of content going forward. So long as you ask great questions, so long as you have great comments, 857-600-0518. Every show, public show, will be an hour long now. And we're going to focus the second half hour on the questions and comments that you send, 857-600-0518, every day. That means that the patrons, you get an hour and a half show. I'm just working harder. And that's fine. I'm working harder. Patrons, what you're going to get is going to continue to be this revolutionary kind of, I don't know what we do in the patrons. It's just kind of a spiritual kind of experience. It's me just letting loose and saying everything that I can't say publicly. So patrons, you're not going to lose anything. In fact, you're going to get more added to you. So an hour and a half content for patrons, hour content publicly, but it's going to be driven by your voice, 857-600-0518. One last thing before we go to voicemails. The voice that you hear on the podcast now, the beautiful voice that says, the Benjamin Dixon Show. It's only possible. You know, I can't do impersonations that good. The last patron that I just called out her name, Tracy Fuller, she is the voice of the Benjamin Dixon Show. And she just so happens to be my sister. It's kind of weird. A lot of people are like, ooh, who's that new sexy voice? And I didn't want to be like, oh, that's my sister. But there it is. And now she's a patron of the show. So welcome aboard, Tracy, 2 times over. Her husband is a patron and she's a patron. So shout out to the Fullers and those amazing, Tracy's amazing voiceovers. You should hire her for voiceover work whenever she decides to do voiceover work. But anyway, I digress. Listen, one topic that I have not gotten a chance to cover yet, and it looks like the majority of my voicemails are about it, is the fact that I believe that the government is failing the unemployed. The government is failing the American people in general. They are playing around with this $600 a week, which if I think you do the math out, that's only $31,000 a year. And they feel like that is too much money to give them. So I haven't had a chance to talk about that in this episode, but there are a lot of voicemails about that. So let's jump right in.
Hi, this is Aaron calling from Atlanta. As far as the government failing the unemployed, I don't think they're failing anybody at all because they are not designed to serve the unemployed. There is no benefit. There has never been any benefit politically to serving the unemployed, so they've never actually done it. The last time that you can even remotely say they serve the unemployed was during the New Deal. And the only reason why they did that was so that they could forestall massive societal shift. And the idea that they're failing the unemployed, I find is, I don't want to say ridiculous, but I don't think it is accurate because that requires them to have tried to serve the unemployed. There's never been an attempt to do that. There's never been an attempt to fix why people are unemployed here. There has only ever been a movement to serve capitalistic interests, in which unemployed people are not viewed as humans, deserving of human rights. They're viewed as capital and should be promptly motivated, whatever that may be, to get a job.
All right. I like the way you put that, Aaron, from Atlanta. Thanks so much for calling 857-600-0518 if you want to join the conversation. I agree that, no, I sort of agree. Here's where I agree with you. I think that it is true that there is a faction in this government, in this country, that has never had any intention of serving the working man, and certainly human, right? And certainly not have any intention of helping unemployed people. That is the mindset of this country. But, and again, as you pointed out during the New Deal, we decided to take a different direction. And it was only for a brief glimmering moment that we actually tried to serve the average man or woman, non-gender conforming individual in this country. So to that end, I agree with your sentiment, but I also disagree with your sentiment because we have to do this as a nation, right? We absolutely have to do this without us creating a system. Here it is. How absurd is it for us to create an entire system off of the exception to the rule versus the norm, the exceptions to the norm? Like the exception to the reality in America are the people who live off of capital gains. The majority of Americans live off of their labor, but we've created a system that benefits only those who live off of capital gains. And so how absurd is it for us to create a system that benefits the exception versus the norm, the average, right? Like, how ridiculous would it be if the only way you could succeed in this country is if you were extremely talented, extremely lucky, and or just extremely rich, not talented, not lucky, just rich. That's really the system that we have, right? I've been able to break through the noise because I'm extremely talented and extremely lucky. Right? The fact that I found that Michael Bloomberg clip is a testament to the amount of luck on my side, or favor, depending on who you ask. But how ridiculous would it be for us to design a system that can only people who are as talented or as lucky or as rich can thrive? So I only use that to point out the fact that we have to do what is right on behalf of the average American, the average human being. So you're right in the sense that America doesn't care, never really has cared, but I disagree with the sentiment because we have to make it care. Next voicemail.
Mark Roper of Oak Park, on my government failings and what the left can do. I think we're going to have to find a different way to fight back. Working people who are working, the main people who are working, are not going to fight back and risk losing what else they have to make conditions better for people below them. They just aren't. And I've tried, and it's going to be a long process. We got to find a way to have that conversation, to motivate people who are already employed to help out people below them. We need some way to convince middle management of not screwing over lower workers to help them out. That's it.
Thanks for that call. Actually, that's a great point. One of the reasons this system works is because of how easy it is to pit people against each other, not just poor people against each other. That's a factor. The fact that you have people who are you have essential workers who are going up against unemployed workers. That's a thing, but you also have the ability of middle management. Man, I think probably one of the most insidious parts of this system is the pride with which management, and of course it's not categorical. I don't want anyone to get, upset. You might be a mid-level manager and you might be one of the good ones, right? Same thing when we say all cops are bad. Is that categorical? Yes. I'm sorry. No, of course, there might be one cop who's a decent human being and they got fired for being a good cop. So even though I can't say these things categorically, overall, the way this system works is really on the backs of mid-level management. They are the executors of the desires of the owners of the company at the expense of the people who work underneath them. So this caller is absolutely right, man. You're absolutely right in the sense that we have to strike at the core of that system. The core of the system is the ability to pit each other against each other, when at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat, because that mid-level manager will get laid off just the same. They'll get fired just the same. But when they're in power, they rule with a certain type of authoritarianism in the workplace that helps facilitate capitalism. And that is a problem. One more voicemail before we take a break.
Islam brother Benjamin. My name is Antonio Alfredo from calling in from Worcester, Massachusetts. I want to talk about the TikTok. I'm really concerned about how Microsoft is able to basically be the sole buyer in collusion with the White House and Trump for them to take over control of TikTok and all the information that it gathers. And for me, it's almost like the history of colonialism is that they start a war, whether economic, physical, for land, which is all economic. And now they're sharing in the spoils of war between Microsoft, Bill Gates, even with the vaccine, with information and news. It's almost a monopoly of power happening right before our eyes, to where we're transforming our capitalistic society back to a feudalistic society from old school England, where we're just reverting back to peasants. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Maybe somebody can look, some good reporters can do some really good searching on how they were the sole buyer of TikTok and how we was not able to get any kind of liberal groups or black economic power to be able to bid for the TikTok, which is really concerning. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for that call. Listen, I have to stress that to a greater or lesser extent, you nailed this. There are monopolies, and our government has become comfortable with monopolies, when at one time we were more than aware of the importance of breaking up the monopolies. And the fact that it's almost like, and it's not a done deal, but obviously, you think of a company that has enough resources to just make a transaction like that happen very quickly. The fact that they have the backing of the White House already kind of just makes it that much easier. I don't think it has the problem. I'm sorry. The reason I'm hesitating is because I hear what you're saying very clearly. I want you to hear that. I hear what you're saying very clearly, that there's really no consideration for any type of other group to purchase TikTok, right? Any type of progressive group or any type of minority group, black group. But the underlying problem isn't any of that. The underlying problem is nationalism, capitalism, right? This nationalistic capitalism that they're currently engaging in, which is all really a facade, right? When I said these companies have no loyalty to America, I want you to understand these politicians have no loyalty to America. Their loyalty is to capitalism. First and foremost, their loyalty is to capitalism. And so they are not really concerned about this in terms of the best interest of Americans. They exploit us every day. These companies make billions of dollars every single quarter off of our data and turn that data over to the federal government. They don't really care about Americans. They care about the profits of corporations. And the way they're doing this and controlling this is through nationalism, right? Because again, like if they're going to make a distinction to say, well, we're concerned about military soldiers or troops who are using this app, then get some internal discipline and restrict the platform with troops. Because, fine. But the rest of us, Like, our data is exploited all day, every day for the profit of corporations, and this is what that company is doing. So they're not really concerned about it from the context of nationalism, because China is a frenemy. It's friendly competition. They are just as capitalistic as America. It's all ridiculous. I'm sorry. I don't even want to. Thank you for the call. I honestly don't even want to take a lot more time talking about it because of how ridiculous it is. But the most important takeaway is it is all a game. This is all a game. They do not care about the Chinese Communist Party. They're not afraid of them because they know it's just a label and that China is capitalistic. That China's about those profit margins. China's about the markets. China's about those quarterly profit margins. They're not, but they use it as a scare tactic, and they have no problem doing this kabuki theater to make you think that they're doing something on behalf of America's security, national security. What they're doing is really on behalf of the competitors, on behalf of Facebook, on behalf of Donald Trump's ego, on behalf of their own investments in other social media companies. They're not concerned about the security of America's data. They sell our data at the very first chance they possibly can. They'll sell our data. They'll sell our data to some random company on the internet to make a profit, and then they'll turn over that data to the federal government to do the same type of authoritarian spying that China wants to do.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Welcome back. Welcome back again. These are the extended episodes. I'm shifting gears. I am trying to do a lot more content. I am getting back into video. I would say within the next week or two, we will have full video of all of these episodes available on all the streaming platforms, and you can always join the conversation. 857-600-0518. Leave me a voicemail. It doesn't matter what time, day or night. Just make it clear about what you want to talk about, and I will get you into the conversation. Let's keep it going.
This is Garrett from Joliet. Just curious, what do you think we can do if Trump is successfully able to sabotage the post office and ruins mail-in voting for November? Thanks.
I think at that point, thanks for the call. Thanks for the question. I think at that point, then we're going to have to, Donald Trump has to go. I know there's a lot of people on the left who are like, they are so disillusioned by what's happened in the primaries. I am totally pissed off about what happened in the primaries. We have every reason to be angry about it. And I have yet to tell anybody what to do in November. I just emphasize the fact that Donald Trump has to go. And I won't criticize someone because they decide to vote however they want to vote. I think people who engage in that type of behavior, they're really just doing it to grandstand on social media. Here's why I'm answering your question this way. I'm answering your question this way is because if Donald Trump successfully sabotages the post office between now and then, which it looks like he's doing, then we're going to have to put on our hazmat suits and go and vote. Like, we're going to have to stand in line and just make sure that we protect ourselves as much as humanly possible. And that, we've seen a lot of protests that have been successful without spreading the virus because everybody wore masks. You know what I mean? So it's possible to do if we can get everybody on the same page in terms of wearing masks, in terms of protecting themselves. We have to be ready to get this man out of office at all costs. Because quite frankly, the damage that they will do in the next 4 years is something that we will never recover from. Period. There's really nothing else to say about it. The damage that Donald Trump will do over the next 4 years is something that we will not recover from, and certainly won't recover from in our lifetime. Next call.
Hi, good morning. My name is Thomas Third Eye, calling from Poplar Grove, Illinois. I'm just sitting here really concerned, trying to read my local school district's reopening plan, trying to decide how I'm going to be able to work full time and still provide some education to my children. I have a son who's supposed to be entering 5th grade, and I have a daughter who's going to be a junior in high school this year. And definitely adamantly against sending them back to school. I think the school's reopening plan, as you know, they're trying to do everything they can. I just don't think it can guarantee the kids' safety. So I'm leaning towards keeping them home until we have a vaccine that's effective and is available to everyone. And I think 6 to 12 months of living like this and adjusting is well worth it for their long-term health and the future. So economically it's going to be a struggle to juggle all these things, but first and foremost, the health and safety of my children is paramount. So that's why I'm probably deciding to keep them home. Big fan of you, Benjamin Dixon. Follow you on Twitter. Keep fighting a good fight, brother. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Hey, man, thanks so much for that. I appreciate you guys a whole lot, and I really appreciate the sentiment of what you're saying, right? There's difficulties even with people who are able to stay at home and work from home, providing the amount of attention that they need. I'm going to be honest with you, like, my wife and I, we have had, we've ebbed and we've flowed in terms of who's taken lead. I'm going the long way around to basically say this, that I'm privileged. I am in a very privileged position right now where my wife is a stay-at-home wife. Now, my wife worked at Harvard University. She has her 2 masters. She's brilliant. And so the only reason she's staying at home now, well, it's because, like I said, we kind of ebb and we flow on who takes lead in terms of the family. Like when we first got married, both of us were working jobs. And then, I took some risk and I quit the job that I was on. I had some side gigs. I quit the main job. Let me tell you something. Not that anybody else would be interested in marrying me, but let I tell you, nobody else could probably handle being married to me than my wife. Because, boy, I upped and quit that job. I wrote them a letter and left that day. And I had some side gigs that were enough to take care of all the bills, obviously. But it was just like, whew, that happened in the first year of our marriage. So anyway, at that point, I followed her, right? Because I had chosen to leave my job. So I followed her in terms of her career. And her career ended up taking us to Boston. And she worked for Harvard. And then I worked other jobs and I started building this show and then my career took us to Atlanta. And, so we're here now and we came to Atlanta. She left Harvard to come to Atlanta. We had some rocky times here, but now we're in a privileged enough position for her to be the primary provider for the kids' education. Not everybody has that. And I try to be mindful of the privilege that I have. And I use the word privilege on purpose, right? Because there are levels to this thing, man. We all are out here, no matter who you are, what you are, color, race, orientation, gender, identification, no matter what, we all have varying degrees of privilege and at certain points, and this is one of the points where I have some serious privilege. I'm in the back office right now. I got plaster on the wall where I'm putting up. I had to redo a wall in order to set it up for video, and I'm recording the podcast. And the kids are out there with my wife, and she's right now entertaining them on the last week of summer. And next week she starts teaching them, and I get to come in on the weekends and and do and supplement and provide like online, not online. So this is what we're going to do, and maybe this will help other people. There are so many resources online, and not just these programs that you have to pay for, but also just like YouTube and Wikipedia, man. I'm going through on Sunday nights, and I'm going through to match really good YouTube videos on history, on science, on math. Khan Academy has been a standard in my family since Khan Academy came out. And I'm going on the weekends and I'm matching to the curriculum that she has. So we have our whole process worked out. And it's worked out because we're privileged enough to be in that position. Now, for everyone else who's not privileged to be in that position, I think we are in positions to help each other, right? I think there are ways for us to cross-pollinate and help each other homeschooling for the first time. So I think we need to use social media to connect with each other. It could be something as simple as making cells, like groups, small groups. Nobody has to leave their home. That's the whole purpose of homeschooling. But small groups of people who have kids in similar age groups that can cross-pollinate in terms of curriculum, in terms of there's ways to make this happen. And there's ways that we can support each other. It's going to take a sacrifice. It's going to take those of us who are in better positions to offer help to help other people. And so I don't know exactly what that looks like. But I do know that, like this caller said, a year out, even worse come to worse. Let me just be real with you. Worst come to worse, and your kids don't get the best education over the next 6 months to a year, they'll be healthy. They might be angry. The older the kids are, the more frustrated because they're going to want to go to school and see all their friends. But they'll be alive. And they won't have long-lasting effects from a virus that we don't know enough about to understand how long these effects last. So the sacrifice, if we got to sacrifice some curriculum and maybe their education comes from YouTube and Wikipedia, well, hell, you could learn anything you want to learn on YouTube and Wikipedia. I know that's not the most political thing to say, but at the same time, it is political because they're putting our children's lives at risk. And I'm sorry, there's no amount of, I would let my kids go outside and jump on the trampoline for the next 6 months. Well, take away winter, but you get it. You get what I'm trying to say. Then I would put them in a position to try to conform to an education system that at best is average. It's just okay. And I could stimulate my kids' minds plenty with the right channels on YouTube and Wikipedia. So if we got to sacrifice a year of education, I'm sorry, just for me, like the caller said, my children's health is worth that and much more.
Hi, my name is Virginia, and I'm from the Inland Empire in California. And I would really like today's episode to be about the government, specifically Congress, failing those who are unemployed. And really, I would love it if you could talk about how we need to have a paradigm shift in this country where we go from, asking nicely and begging our representatives and our senators to represent our interests and needs in this country to demanding that they do so. I think we have not just right, we have a duty to demand that our Congress people represent our needs, since it seems to be true that they are doing or achieving the bare minimum to represent constituents' interests and needs, that they should receive federal minimum wage.
Thanks for that call, Virginia. Listen. The record, how do I put this? I probably would have to talk about this in the Patrons episode because of how egregious their crimes are against Americans, the average American, and how they think they can't be held accountable. These politicians have no concern, no regard for the people that they claim to serve. And it is high time that we have more of a forceful demand of these monsters. Here's what's keeping them stable and steady on the path that they're on. It's the fact that they have been able to politicize everything so much so that they're going to have a group of supporters who back them no matter how ridiculous it is. Donald Trump has gotten 157,000 Americans killed, and he still has like an approval rating of about 36% in terms of the coronavirus. He has a base that's going to back him no matter what. That's a lot of people when you talk about 327 million Americans, and 36% still support this man. And so that's enough political power for them to feel invincible. They feel politically invincible. And the problem is so long as these hermetically sealed echo chambers continue the way they are, they're going to continue to feel invincible. And they'll be able to play the game all the way to the very end. all the way to the very end of their term, and then just run, and maybe they win, maybe they don't. And if they don't win, then they go and they become a lobbyist. So it's a win-win situation for them. The truth of the matter is if they keep playing around with all these people who are hurting right now, a whole new dynamic is going to come into play. And that dynamic is an uprising that I don't know how it plays out. But I do know that the people will hold them accountable eventually. You can only push people so far. Let me repeat. You can only push people so far. They're only going to put up with so much. They're not going to wait. Let me tell you something. If they don't have checks out, and let's just call it what it has to be, right? No, let's not mince words. If they don't start writing checks to the people soon, like immediately, there's not going to be any waiting to vote. There's not going to be, we're all just going to suffer until November, and then we're going to get Donald Trump out of office, and then we're going to wait another 3 months until inauguration, and then we're going to wait for a month before they do something, and then things will be okay. Not with 45 million people unemployed. So they're going to have to do something immediately. If they don't, there will be a new level of accountability that they're going to have to answer to the people for. The people are going to hold them accountable, and it's not going to be at the polls. It's going to be in front of their homes. It's going to be in front of the White House. It's going to be in front, or if not inside, of the Capitol building. You cannot expect 45 million people to sit by and just allow this system to run over them and to crush them into dust. And while they give money to the rich, while they give money to corporations. So the forcefulness, there's two types of forcefulness that we're talking about here, to be sure. Okay. The forcefulness that we're talking about is twofold. The first one is, an electoral forcefulness. That's a game that has been rigged for a long time. I don't even know if it's worthwhile mentioning, but it's there, right? But the forcefulness that's really getting ready to happen is not going to wait to November. You're not going to have 45 million individuals who represent, I don't know how many households, who represent how many children, family members who are not able to feed their children of no fault of their own. And even if it was of their fault, they're still human beings. They still deserve to be fed and housed and clothed in the country, in the richest country in the history of the world. And so there will be some accountability, and the politicians, they have a choice now to determine whether or not that accountability comes at the polls or whether or not that accountability comes in front of their homes. What are you going to do? Yeah, and of course, they got the police state. They've been exercising the police state. They've been demonstrating the forcefulness that they will crack down, with which they will crack down on all of the American people. But there's not enough cops to stop 45 million people. I'm just sorry, there's not. There's no amount of tear gas that they can use, no amount of beatings. I mean, there's just nothing that's going to stop the force of all of the people who have been put in untenable situations. Nothing. And so the politicians need to get their acts together and determine whether or not they want to be held accountable at the polls or whether or not they want to be held accountable in the streets. Because the people are not just going to sit by and suffer in isolation. Because they realize something important. An important critical component of this is the fact that we cannot allow them to think that we are suffering alone. I've only got a few more seconds, but this is critical. I wish I had started this a little sooner. So long as they have you, the unemployed, thinking that you are in this by yourself, that you are in this of something that you did to get you into this. Something you're in this because of this is just how it's supposed to be. So long as they have you thinking like that, then they can stop your force. They can stop you from gathering and coalescing into an army of people who know better. People who know that this system can do better because it has done better. Who know that this system has put trillions of dollars into the markets and nothing for the people. $1,200, nothing. While they're lecturing you about getting $600 a week, $31,000 a year. They have sent trillions to Wall Street. And so long as they have you thinking that you did something or that you aren't working hard enough to find a job, so long as they have you blaming yourself instead of blaming the system, then they can keep you from coalescing, galvanizing. Which is why the most important thing is for you to understand that you are not in this by yourself. You are not guilty of anything. And everything around us has to be changed because the world changed underneath us in a matter of days. You're not by yourself. Patrons, stay tuned. We're going to talk about this a lot more in the Patrons episode. Everyone else, patreon.com/the BPD show. Thank you. Voicemails, 857-600-0518. Call in anytime. Speak your mind, and I'll get you on air. I'll see you next time.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.